All right. What is up, everyone? What do we got here? It's Saturday, March 8th of 2025. Make sure I have the date and the year correct. So one day the historical evidence and data will be that I was here today. But I'm looking forward to another, I don't know, what we call these things, another live stream with you that hopefully has the content that will help you in your lives, whether that's your transformation, your recovery, your healing journey, we call it. So as we're waiting for a few of our friends to hop on here, let's give you a little quick introduction of myself and what we do here at this channel. So my name is Param. We do this most Saturdays of the month, unless I'm playing in a pickleball tournament somewhere. And it's something that we've been doing since March of 2020. If you know, that was a specific time in human history. The world shut down and our world closed for 3 months at first. And I didn't know what the heck to do. So we decided to put this on YouTube at the time. And so if you go to our YouTube page and click on the live, you'll be able to see 4 years of me just rambling in the computer screen to whoever's out there listening. And it's been really cool. It's a very interactive community. Sometimes we've had a lot of people on this and sometimes we haven't. But regardless of who is here and why they're here and why they're not here, I try to do my best each time. So, like I said, my name is Param. I got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, licensed as an addictions counselor, been in the world of recovery, going all the way back to 2008. I am a college teacher at Saddleback College. I also, thank you. Yeah, this is someone here at Terry. Morning, afternoon, evening. Hello, sir. Thanks for your experience, strength, and hope. You're very welcome. And we got Jim here saying good stuff. Jadle saying good morning. So we're here. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. So, I love doing this. And today we're going to talk about just the journey of healing and recovery in general, okay? I'm going to talk about a few things that I think is going to have some value for you, the listener. And it's some things that I call the prescription of how to get through the healing and recovery journey to the best of your ability, okay? And what I mean by that is this. When we go through dysfunction, when we go through addiction, when we go through mental illness, when we go through trauma, there are certain feelings that we experience as human beings. Now, our basic human emotions are what? We got happy, we got sad, we got mad, we got afraid, we got disgust. Happiness doesn't really happen too often, especially towards the end. But some people are really sad. They're sad just in general. They're depressed about their current life situation. They're depressed about some of the things that they've endured, gone through. Sometimes people are mad, mad at themselves, mad at others, mad at the world. Sometimes they're really afraid, just fear, locked in fear, like the fear of the unknown of what's going to happen to me, my loved ones, what's around the horizon. And sometimes they're disgusted. How the heck did I get here? How did I end up here? But there's another feeling that is really related to the actions we take. And there's another, we can call it a feeling that's more about our experience. The first one is guilt, right? So guilt, where the hell does this come from? Guilt comes from one of two things. That's it. It either comes from doing something you shouldn't have done or not doing something you should have done. So it comes from an action or an inaction. And there's a lot of people who come to this recovery world and they're just riddled by guilt for all the things they did do or didn't do. And then shame is a little bit deeper. It's kind of like how we feel about ourselves. People feel a lot of like low self-esteem, worthlessness. Maybe they just feel like they're bad. They're a bad person. Not that they're doing bad things, but they're just bad, bad human being. And these two things together, they create what I call is a very disempowered state. And in a disempowered state, we actually don't have the ability to transform. We don't have the vitality, the motivation, the inspiration, the hope to transform. So what do we do about it? And what's up, Mom and Dad? And Kian and Lila? Ooh, a party over there. Hope you guys are having fun. Eat my mom's food. She makes good stuff. And I want to kind of give a prescription for this, and it's like a 5-step prescription. The first 3 are kind of things that you just have to internalize and accept. The 4th one is going to be very related to what are you going to do about it now? And the 5th one is how you're going to do what it is you're going to do. So here comes the prescription. I got the banners. Number 1, if you read what it says hindsight is 2020. What is known to you today may not have been known to you in your past. So when people are coming in the healing recovery world, sometimes they're just like, why did I do that? I know better. Well, you know what? At the time you went through it, did you know better? You might have not. I would even say maybe you were doing the best you could with the information that you had. Okay? And something about hindsight being 2020 and connecting the dots. I'm just going to go completely off script right now and talk about something different, because there is a very valuable lesson that I learned by watching a speech that Steve Jobs, the one of the co-founders of Apple, gave at a commencement for Stanford University. It's awesome when a person that never graduated college is giving a commencement for Stanford University. It is interesting, isn't it? But the premise of the talk was this. He says in life, you can never connect the dots moving forwards, but you can always connect dots moving backwards. Okay, that was like kind of the first thing he wanted to teach. And what does that mean, and especially in relation to his life, and how can we apply that to our healing and recovery world? Well, I'm going to share a little story about Steve Jobs that you might not know. Steve Jobs was born into a life from a drug-addicted family, like mom and dad, addicted, not well, we'll call it. I don't want to put too many labels on them. They weren't able to take care of a kid. And what they decided to do was put up their son for, adoption so he can have a better shot at life. And, people come in for interview processes, and eventually this couple they agreed for this couple to take their son away under one stipulation, that he must go to college. And they said, you know what? We're both college educated people. I don't know what they did, but they were like engineers or something, we'll call it. And they said, deal. And now Steve Jobs is their kid. And Steve Jobs calls those people his parents. So he's got his biological parents that had to give him up, and his parents. And he's being raised, nothing too traumatic, not a bad life, just a average, healthy life. And eventually he doesn't really thrive in school, but he decides to go to community college, Reed's Community College. The only reason he's going, why? Because of a promise, right? So there's a promise that he had to go, and he's in Reed's Community College, and he's giving 0% effort, not really going to the classes, just hanging around the campus. Every Sunday he would walk himself like 7-8 miles to the Hare Krishna Center and have some free food and do some chanting with the meditative spiritual folks over there. But there was a class he was really fascinated in. And this class was a calligraphy class. Calligraphy is different types of handwritings from different times and eras and that kind of stuff. And he wasn't even enrolled in the class. He would just go there in a kind of like a lecture hall and just sit at the back and just like watch the teacher teach about calligraphy. And eventually, he was kind of one of those guys a little too smart for school. So he said, you know what? I fulfilled my duty. I went to college. You see, the parents never said you got to graduate from college. So there was a little wiggle room right there. He went to college and said, this isn't for me. Gets in a van, goes cross country to, Northern California. Wasn't called Silicon Valley back there, but Northern California. And him and his buddy, they create the first, the prototypes, the first hard drive, whatever you want to call them. I'm not too technically savvy, but they create whatever the heck it was that they can go selling off, and eventually became the foundation of this thing called Apple. And, Apple became what Apple is. And this guy's like the genius engineer that's running it. And on a side story, we'll pause right there. He ends up getting fired from Apple as the co-founder and CEO because he was hard to get along with. And he leaves and he goes to this place he creates this, a startup called Next, which created Pixar. Okay. Like Pixar was created by Steve Jobs and his team after he got fired from Apple. So what was like a really bad thing in his life that happened ended up being a good thing. And the crazy part is, Apple ends up buying Pixar back from him. So now he becomes a CEO, becomes the CEO of Apple. But you know what? So let's go back to why Apple became what it became. So Apple computers at the time were the only PC, personal computer, maybe even the only computer at the time, that the reason why people like them so much, especially artists and creative people like them so much, was because it was the only computer around available that had accessibility to different types of fonts. Like you can actually type and you can have different types of font writings, all these cool different things. And you know what? The inspiration for him, where he learned that, was Reed's Community College, which he would have not gone to if the people who adopted him never promised the parents that their kid was going to go to college, which would not have happened to if his parents weren't unwell enough that they had to adopt him. See, dots in life get connected backwards. But if they're getting connected backwards, that means they're getting connected moving forwards. We just can't see them yet. And that's where kind of faith has to come and hope. So the first one here, hindsight is 2020. It's easy to connect dots backwards, my friends. Anyone can do it. But can you have the faith that they're connecting moving forwards, even in dark times, even when you can't see it? So don't be too frustrated today if you're looking in the rearview mirror and you're seeing all these things clearly. When you were going through them, you couldn't see it clearly, right? That's just the way life is. So the next one, it says you must. This is a prescription that I'm writing for you. And yeah, I can't really write a medical prescription, but I can write a mental health prescription if we got one, a way of living. It says that you must have compassion for yourself in the past choices you have made in this journey called life. Forgiveness is a process. Begin that process now. So people that struggle with mental health, with addictions, with trauma, they're actually some of the most sensitive, empathic, loving humans in the world. Now, some of their actions that you see, especially when they're in the midst of their diseases of addiction, all like when you see that, you're like, how does this person care about anybody but themselves? Man, I'm telling you, even those people, when they, sometime long before they ever picked up a drink or a drug, there was probably a lot of empathy and sensitivity in them. And once they figure it out, the old version of them comes back. But, you know, if you're a parent or spouse and you got to have some compassion for yourself. You know, we all do it for other people, but there's a nice quote that I like that says, if compassion is not extended to yourself, it is incomplete, right? Like, yeah, you know, people take off their shirt or their back and put on someone else, or people give their last few dollars to someone else. But what about yourself? Where do you place yourself on the list of people, places, and things that you give compassion to? And some of the choices you've made in life, good, bad, indifferent, now that you can connect the dots, you're like, okay, well, that was a good one. Here's the thing. You did what you did. And at some point, you must let go of that. Because if you don't, if you keep holding yourself hostage to the choices you made in the past, like, I knew better, why did I do this? Guess what? You take that with you to the future, and your future starts to look like your past. And that's why people stay in these vicious cycles that I call disempowered cycles that inhibit and prohibit and stop and derail any type of change or transformation. So you must look in the mirror and forgive that reflection looking back at you. And I'm not saying everything changes in that moment, but if you want things to change, that moment needs to happen. Now, there are people in life that might not want to forgive you or might want to forgive you yet. And that's okay. You know, that's on their timeline and not yours. You got to forgive yourself. And sometimes people say, you know what, I just can't forgive myself for the things I've did. And I believe that's a form of it's almost like an egotistical pride, like just being a martyr to self. Like, why not? Because what I did was so bad. So what? But you don't understand, like, I really messed things up. Who cares? At some point, you have to forgive and forget and move the heck on. Because if you don't, like I said, you stay a prisoner to your past. Yeah, there's a good one. Use the negative past to create positive futures and more. You know, it's like and so Jim, you know, I always call him a master counselor here. He's a good guy, been in my life for almost 10 years. We subscribe to a program of our personal recovery, 12-step program. that says, sometimes our darkest nights become our brightest assets, right? Sometimes those moments of like despair, negative past experiences become like the light that we shine in the future. And guess what? Not just for ourselves, for others. Like imagine grabbing a flashlight that you're shining in the darkness of someone else and they get to see something that they can't see. So forgiveness is so important. It is so damn important. And some people do it and some people don't. Some people hold grudges against themselves and others for life. And at the end of the day, for what? So you were right about the fact that you were right? Isn't that ridiculous? They're family members. They're human beings that hold grudges with each other and stop speaking to each other because like they're self-righteous. Don't get me wrong. There are some people in life that are so toxic and unhealthy and bad and like dangerous that you might have to set a boundary and remove them from your life. But you're doing that in a way that's like empowering, not like, oh, it's out of spite. It's out, man, that person is so sick. I wish the best for them. I just can't have them in my life. Not because that person's such an asshole, that person's such an idiot, that person's such a bad person. I don't want to be around them. That's a whole different energy. Wish those people well and hope that one day they find peace. It's completely different than I don't want that person in my life because they're the worst human being of all time. It's all a perspective thing, right? So the next one, we go into this thing called you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. However, now you know better. So, like I said, most human beings have good intentions. Okay. And yes, I do believe that most human beings have good intentions. I know there's always some negative, sadistic, dark person that says, no, most people have bad intentions. I believe that most people are inherently good. Are there bad people out there? Or people that do bad things? Absolutely. But I do believe that there's more people doing good things and more good people out there in general. And even in those places and countries and areas that we think people are bad, there's still more good people than bad, right? They're just not the ones that get glorified and shown. And so I believe that you did the best you could with the information that you had, with the way you were raised, with what you knew about life and what you didn't know about life. But sometime when you come in this recovery world and you get exposed to conversations like this, or you make some connections or go to some meetings or do some therapy, you start to learn things that you didn't know in the past. So what was unknown becomes known. A perfect example is parents, or when they have a child that's struggling with addictions, they oftentimes do this thing that we call enabling. Okay, if you watch these talks, we talk about it forever, but enabling just means supporting somebody through their dysfunction, and they're doing it through an act of love. For example, they're continuing to pay for some, expenses that the kid has, knowing that that kid is probably buying drugs with it. But they want to do it because they love their kid so much, not because of drugs. They feel like they're helping in other areas. They feel like they're not letting their kid down. They're feeling like eventually the kid's going to do okay. They're doing it out of love, not knowing that the support they're giving is actually killing their kid, right? So that's called enabling. And then they start coming to programs and like, hey, you can't do that. Like, I know you're doing it with a good intention, but the more you continue doing that, the more you're enabling this kid to stay in this dysfunctional pattern. And they're like, well, what do you mean? No, I love my kid. They're like, we understand that, but love and enabling are two separate things, right? And all of a sudden they learn something they didn't know in the past. So now what was unknown to them is known. At the time, they were doing the best with what they could, but now they got some new information, okay? So now here is where the action step starts. Here is where I'm telling you that this prescription starts to change. So now people know better. I'm sure that you watching this right now, there's certain things in your life that you didn't know, but now you know, right? Certain things in life you didn't know, but now you know. What do you do with that information? Well, here's the next one. Now that you know better, you must do better. The lessons in life will continue to repeat themselves until you, the student, learns the lesson. So what does that mean? Now you have this new information. Okay? What are you going to do with it? Well, my friends, You must do better than you did in the past. You know, in the beginning, this is where like taking responsibility starts to happen. You know, knowledge can be powerful. It really can. Knowledge can transform things. But you know that phrase, knowledge is power? I don't actually fully agree with that. You want to know why? It's missing something. I believe that applied knowledge is power. So you can know all the crap in the world in your head, thousands of things. But until you apply them, they don't mean anything. They just rattle around with all the thousand other thoughts that you have inside your head. So the application of the knowledge you have, it's very, very important. And now that you know better, you got to do better. And yes, Jim, it doesn't matter when this happens in the process called life. If it happened today and it should have happened 20 years ago, who cares? And today is better than 20 years from now, because there's a good quote I'll share with you that comes from it's attributed to the Chinese proverb. I don't know where the heck it comes from. For all I know, it could just be the internet. But it says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Ready for the next part? The second best time to plant a tree is now. So yeah, there's some things in life, like when it comes to communication or learning how to express your love or learning how to deal with your emotions, you probably should have learned 20 years ago. But how about this? You didn't. And that's okay. Now you learn. And what are you going to do with it? Because if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. It's now or never. I genuinely mean that. And sometimes people say, well, no, what do you mean it's now or never? I'll do it in the future. Well, when the future comes, in that moment, it's either now or never. It's always a now. But people push it down the road and it becomes a never. You know, and so now that you know better, you got to do better. The lessons of life will continue to repeat themselves if you don't. So there are things in your life, my friends, that you have learned recently in the past year, past 2 years, yet despite of learning them, you're not doing anything with them. A perfect example is somebody who doesn't know that the food they're eating is bad for their heart, okay, or bad for their cholesterol, bad for their veins. They don't know because that's all they know. And they go to the doctors one day, and the doctor says, hey, my friend, we just did some blood work on you. Your cholesterol is really, 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 really high. You have to take this medication because you're at risk for cardiovascular disease. You got some blocked arteries. We don't know if you had a little mini stroke or not. What's going on? You're at risk for heart attack. All this is happening because the diet you're eating is just really bad for you right now. And it doesn't look like you're moving around or exercising. So they didn't know that the food they were eating, because it's all they knew. It's all they were ever raised with. That was actually bad for them. They just thought that's what you eat. And they thought everyone in their family ate it and everybody in their family has heart disease. So they just think it's genetics, right? But now the doctor says, hey, no, you can reverse a lot of this stuff. You can reverse your type 2 diabetes. You could decrease your cholesterol. You can have better blood flow. You can protect yourself from potential heart attack by changing this diet around. And now they have the information. So they didn't know, but now they know. What are they going to do with it? Some people take the information and say, I must make changes in my life based on what this person told me, by eliminating these foods, by adding these foods, by eliminating this, by adding this, so I can be healthy. And some people take that prescription the doctor gave them, they look at it, they go to McDonald's, they order food, they grab the prescription, throw it in that bag when they throw the bag away. They eventually have more cardiovascular problems. God forbid they have another heart attack. And here's the thing. You must do better. You know, it's the whole life happens to us and it's unfair sometimes. I'll agree with some of that. But there are certain things we do to ourselves that makes us think that life is unfair. There's certain ways that we harm ourselves and then think life is harming us. You know, life is already hard enough. But when we kind of don't change and just stay in a stuck state, what do we expect? You know, what do we expect? 15-year-old that started to use weed. What is your advice on a 15-year-old who started to use weed? Well, a little bit different here, right? So adolescent work is tough because the family, you know, there's a sense of responsibility that they have for an adolescent. It's like a legal thing on some level. If a 15-year-old comes and tells a therapist, by the way, they're smoking weed, there is a judgment call if you tell the family or not on that one, believe it or not. But I would say, so the weed is not the problem. That's the first thing that we have to understand. The weed is not the problem. It has to do with what this adolescent is getting from the weed. Okay. What are they experiencing? What are they getting? What type of relief are they finding? Is it taking away their anxiety? Well, then we know that they're experiencing some anxiety problems. What is that anxiety tied to? Is it helping them sleep at night? We understand they're having some restlessness and racing thoughts. It's helping them quiet their mind so they can fall asleep. Are they using it socially with a bunch of friends? It tells us that they have potentially low self-esteem and they want to be accepted by others. So they're doing something that they're seeing around them. Whatever it is, we have to get to that part first, because if we focus on the weed, we get angry. We get like, why are you doing this? You're going to end up being a drug addict. All that kind of stuff happens. But that's not what we're looking at. We got to find out what it is going on with them. It's a strong encouragement to have the kids do some therapy. Adolescents are oftentimes really resistant to doing that. But, you can have them kind of support, like help find the therapist. Like they could be invested in it, find someone they like. And if the kid says no, then parents at this age, you have a lot of, control over the kid. Take away a few things and say, we got to do some family therapy together. My goal is to give all these things back to you. And I just want to go to family therapy. And when you go there, you don't go there saying, my kid's smoking weed. I'm angry. I'm pissed off. I don't know what to do. It's more like, let's find out why this is happening, right? There's experimental drug use that's going to happen with almost every single human being. You'd be surprised how many people experimentally use drugs. It becomes a phase for them. But if the underlying issues aren't resolved, like the anxiety, the self-esteem, the inability to sleep, the undiagnosed whatever's going on here with the person, then it can be a recipe for addiction. It really can be. So are there a lot of 15-year-olds that smoke weed? Yes. Are there a lot of 15-year-olds that become addicted to weed and addicted to other drugs? No. So it's important to kind of get to the underlying causes of it. I mean, it's a complex question, but that's the best I can give you on a public level, at least, because So what does Terry say here? I've noticed good things are starting to happen in my life, even though I'm in early recovery. I had a terrible childhood and was beaten black and blue from father. Both parents were alcoholics. Well, first of all, Terry, I'm really sorry that you had to endure such let's call it what it is, an effed up childhood. I don't think any child should ever go through that. I don't think any human being should ever go through that, especially children, because children, they are victims in that situation. They can't leave. They got to stay there. But I'm going to tell you some stuff right here. It sounds like you're ready to kind of take responsibility for this stuff. I will never tell you, Terry, I don't even know who you are, but I will never tell you that it's your fault that someone did that to you, ever. It wasn't. I want you to know that. But I will tell this adult right now that's talking to me, the older Terry, that unfortunately it's your responsibility to heal from that experience. Even if they did it to you, you still have to heal from that experience. Because if you don't heal from that experience, you will bleed all over people who never cut you. Okay? And if you don't heal from that experience, you will do to yourself through self-destructive ways, through addiction, through self-harm, through destructive, toxic relationships. You're going to do to yourself what others did to you. Can you figure that? So if it's really traumatic, it sounds like it was, maybe when you get a little bit more stability in your sobriety, like past 90 days, maybe try out some EMDR therapy and go through that trauma with an EMDR specialist. And, break that cycle. And it sounds like you are, but break that cycle of dysfunction and abuse. So one day when you have people in your life that you're responsible for, you might already do, but if you don't, make sure that you give them the opposite experience of that and break that cycle. So they're not one day talking to some random person on the internet saying, hey, I had a really effed up childhood and this and that and this and that. You have a chance to say, they can say that they have a childhood full of love because you are the one that did the work. So hopefully that helps. And the last one here says, make a commitment to continue to always do your best. Understand that your best will be different each day, and that's okay, but always do your best. So people in life sometimes give the bare minimum, but they wonder why their life doesn't get good. Well, I don't know, man. You get out of life what you put in. You get out of everything what you put in. if you give the bare minimum, I hope life doesn't give you more than the bare minimum, actually. Because what about all the people that are actually trying? What about all the people like Terry that's actually trying to heal from traumatic wounds of childhood? He's waking up, he's trying to figure shit out so he can become a better version of himself. That person deserves a little bit different life experience. People that don't even try, why should they? Right? And those are the ones actually that are really dangerous, really entitled. So the thing about doing your best is interesting. I'm not one of those like hustle culture people that every day you got to grind and do the hardest. That's not realistic. Every day you just got to do the best you can for that day. Some days my best is so intensely high, and some days my best is barely something. But as long as it's my best, and how do we know we did our best, by the way? There's a simple test. At the end of the day, you go look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the following question. Did I do my best today? The mirror will never lie. You either look at yourself and know you did your best, and if you did, when you put your head on the pillow that night, there's no feeling more peaceful and calm and relaxing as that. And if you look at yourself in the mirror and you know you didn't do your best, you put your head at night and you're worried about the next day, worried about this, worried about that, So that's a choice that you have to do. It's really none of my business. Do you think testing would do any good? I do think testing will do good just because it's a form of accountability. It's a way that, and testing with marijuana, by the way, is kind of tough because based on how much they use, a simple, urine test, marijuana can stay in the system if they're smoking a lot, it can stay in the system for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks sometimes. So they can say they're not using, but the test keeps popping up positive. If they do vigorous exercise, sometimes because it gets stored in the fat, it can spike some marijuana in the urine. But I think any type of accountability would be good. And I think, going to family therapy and having the kid get invested in the whole process of like accountability, what it's going to look like, you want them to be involved with this. You want it to be less punitive and more supportive, if you will. But yeah, it's tough with adolescents, but it's important for them to also to look at the underlying stuff, not just the action. Of course, smoking weed is bad for a 15-year-old with a developing brain. We all know that. And last but not least, I am in therapy. We just started to work through this. I appreciate your input. I want to participate in your groups, not trying to throw off your group. Just enjoy listening to you and want to be a part. Yeah, anytime, man. So Terry, this is almost every Saturday on YouTube. And if it's not, if you go to our YouTube page that you're watching this on and go click on the live, you'll see 4 years of these videos. So anytime you're on this, it's interactive. You can talk, ask questions, I'll answer. And if I'm not here, or if you just want to watch it during the week, go watch the live videos. I think if you're in this mode of kind of transformation, you're going to get a lot out of it. Good luck in your therapy. And everyone else, love and appreciate all of you. I'm off to go play some pickleball. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.